first three parts of this series, it was demonstrated that both the United States government and the Chinese government are engaged in an Agenda 21 motivated plot to relocate rural and suburban residents to more densely populated urban centers, to live in overcrowded conditions, where a person's every movement and every activity is monitored. The previously described policies are proving effective in moving populations into densely populated urban centers in accordance with Agenda 21 policy. However, the process is not as speedy as the globalists had hoped. The global elite needed a game-changing event in the United States. In order to speed things up, the elite bankers at Goldman Sachs masterminded the Gulf oil spill to this end. The Gulf oil spill is a depopulation event of epic proportions, in order to demonstrate the fact that the BP event was indeed planned event, and is part of a bigger scheme, to depopulate the Gulf of its 40 million residents. It is necessary to present a review of the money trail in the Gulf which shows forethought, planning and motive, as a precursor to more important reasons, on why the Gulf had to be destroyed. Follow the money Gulf co-conspirators. When I first investigated the Gulf, even in a 7-part series, I believed I was looking at an event that was motivated by pure greed. Although the major players e.g. BP, Transocean, Halliburton, Goldman Sachs did make huge sums of money from this planned catastrophe, I have since discovered the event was not just perpetrated for purposes of greed alone. The net effect of the Gulf event is that it is a depopulation event, and the government is in league with perpetrators of this event to achieve this end. It is not just possible to demonstrate that the Gulf oil explosion was a planned event, it is possible to pinpoint the date when the wheels were put into motion, which would make it nearly impossible for any investigation to get to the bottom of the event by American authorities. The subsequent cover-up for this event began in 2007, 3 years before the event, as Goldman Sachs reorganized Transocean, the owner of the destroyed oil rig, into a Cayman Island corporation. In doing so, it made Transocean virtually impossible for Congress to investigate and subsequently discipline the perpetrators. Unashamedly, Goldman Sachs and Transocean instituted a put option on Transocean stock for Transocean insiders the very morning of the explosion. Transocean boldly walked away with a $270 million profit immediately following the explosion, because they had doubly indemnified the rig only weeks prior to the explosion through Lloyd's of London. This alone should have been enough to trigger a massive investigation. Within 3 weeks prior to the oil rig explosion, Goldman Sachs dumped the lion's share of their BP stock. Just another coincidence, you say? Then explain why BP CEO Tony Hayward sold 40% of his BP holdings in the weeks prior to the spill, and paid off his mortgage on his estate in Kent, England, avoided staggering losses. And true to form involving the pattern of perpetuating a false flag event with media complicity, on June 8, 2010, less than 6 weeks following the oil spill, BP bought Google and Yahoo search terms related to the oil spill, in an obvious attempt to conceal as much of the truth as possible from the public. Gulf of Cheney. There are yet more financial coincidences. At the time of the oil rig explosion, Halliburton was drilling at the base of the Deepwater Horizon. Very coincidentally, only 11 days before, on April 9, 2010, Halliburton purchased Boots & Coots for $250 million. Just who is Boots & Coots? Coincidentally, they are the largest oil cleanup firm in the world, and when the explosion took place 11 days later, wasn't it fortunate that Halliburton was there armed with Boots & Coots, as they capitalized on their timely good fortune? Subsequently, Halliburton's profits increased 83% in just 3 months following the Gulf oil crisis subsequent to the cleanup efforts. It was simply raining coincidences. The top 5 dumping institutions of BP stock just prior to the spill included Goldman Sachs Asset Management, LP, $4,680,822, Wachovia Bank National Association, $2,667,419. And it is important to note that Wachovia is a subsidiary of Goldman Sachs, thus making this one tight little family of co-conspirators. We also see massive dumping of Sanders Capital, LLC $1,371,785 and PNC Bank, National Association $1,177,413 brings noted globalist George Soros into the conspiracy as well. Obama identified as a profiteering co-conspirator the late Bob Chapman, while appearing the Alex Jones show in June of 2010, revealed that Obama's only asset holder, Vanguard I and Vanguard II, dramatically sold off BP stock only a few weeks before Gulf oil explosion. Chapman also revealed that according to this FSB report the largest seller of BP stock in the weeks before this disaster occurred was the American investment company known as Vanguard, who through two of their financial arms Vanguard Windsor II Investor and Vanguard Windsor I Investor unloaded over 1.5 million shares of BP stock, saving their investors hundreds of millions of dollars. Chief among them was President Obama. The FSB further estimates in this report that through Obama's 3 accounts in the Vanguard 500 index fund he stands to make another $100 million over the next 10 years. As their largest stock holding is in the energy giant ExxonMobil, they believe will eventually acquire BP and all of their assets, for what will be essentially a rock-bottom price, and which very predictably BP has hired Goldman Sachs to advise them on. Watch the entire interview below. This complicity on the part of the president explains why EPA Director Lisa Jackson refused to hold BP's feet to the fire for using the most deadly and least effective oil dispersant, Corexit. BP and Goldman Sachs hold the controlling interest in Nalco. Nalco is the manufacturer of Corexit. Therefore, BP, Goldman Sachs, Transocean, Halliburton and the President of the United States made money on the cleanup from the spill. Obama's participation ties together the link between these rogue corporations and the government. You now have to ask yourself, when it comes to this event, are you a coincidence theorist or a well-documented conspiracy theorist? More importantly, this event is much more than a financial conspiracy. This conspiracy is more motivated by the desire to depopulate the Gulf Coast. The eventual depopulation of 40 million Americans from the Gulf. Depopulating the Gulf, the entire ecosystem of the Gulf has been damaged beyond repair. Because of the use of the controversial dispersant, Corexit, the people in the Gulf are being exposed to poisoned air, water and food. Much has been made of the cleanup workers from the Exxon Valdez oil spill and their ultimate fate. Most died before reaching the age of 51. Researchers, Wilma Sabra and Kim Anderson et al., have detailed how many people in the Gulf cannot expect to live a normal lifespan because of the high rate of cancer-causing chemicals found in Gulf subjects' bloodstreams. This makes the Gulf a depopulation event by definition. Depopulating the Gulf. The Army Corps of Engineers have been positioned to engage in a future and direct Gulf depopulation action. According to the Army Corps of Engineers, in 2007 the United States government allocated $40 billion for a project to depopulate the Gulf Coast region. The Army Corps of Engineers spokesperson and project director, S.I. Rees, downplayed the importance of the $40 billion allocation. However, the funding is available for the express purpose of relocating Gulf residents and was admitted to by Rise on Air. The original document, which detailed the core Gulf depopulation project is now classified, was done so after Jesse Ventura exposed the plan on a show, Conspiracy Theory, on December 10, 2010. If you would like to actually view the cover page and the first page of the document, simply web search Jesse Ventura and the Louisiana Conspiracy video, and move the time bar to about 35 minutes. The Gulf region is an ever-increasing Armageddon ripe for mandatory evacuation. In addition to imperiling the food supply and destroying the health of the residents, the Gulf disaster is overwhelming the environment and threatens to bring disaster to the southeastern portion of the United States on an unprecedented scale. The Holocaust in the Gulf has grown to such proportions that the European Union Times reports issued a grave report, which was prepared for President Medvedev by Russia's Ministry of Natural Resources, in which the report warns that the BP spill will become the worst environmental catastrophe in all of human history, and will bring total destruction to the eastern half of the North American continent. The environmental damage has spread as far north as Memphis as local residents report toxic rainfall, containing Corexit, is falling on and damaging local farmers' crops. This report aired over 2 years ago, and was among the first indicators that the evapotranspiration cycle was impacted by the Deepwater Horizon explosion and the subsequent use of Corexit to disperse the spilled oil. Methane. The oil, which is still emanating from the seafloor, contains about 40% methane, compared with about 5% found in typical oil deposits, said John Kessler, a Texas A&M University oceanographer, who is studying the impact of methane from the spill. Kessler et al., in June of 2010, warned the public that methane was not going to dissipate on its own, and that it would continue to increase and come ashore with unpredictable results. Merchant marine expert, Captain Kelly Sweeney, while appearing on the Common Sense Show on July 10, 2010, made similar predictions in which he stated that he, and many of his sources, feared catastrophic methane explosions near several coastal cities, which could be triggered by the right atmospheric conditions combined with the high levels of highly flammable methane. Click here to listen to Hour 1 of this interview. Methane explosion. There are also massive sinkholes and enormous amounts of escaping methane gas from the Bayou Corn La disaster area is particularly concerning. Local officials have made repeated references to powerful underground forces, which are causing the monster sinkholes in the swampland, which has already led to the evacuation of 150 homes, and has led to a heated discussion regarding the likelihood of a methane-bubbled tsunami from the 2010 Gulf of Mexico BP explosion. Government officials have warned the local leadership that these high levels of methane pose serious risks to health, fire, and could even lead to large explosions. Officials have further warned that local residents needed to obey any coming mandatory evacuation orders. There is no defense against leaking methane, and the situation is spreading through the salt domes in the region. Methane has been proven to enter structures through foundational cracks or through sewer traps, if the house or office is built on or near landfills, and in the case of Louisiana, it can come through salt domes, where the oil in the Corexit has been accumulating for 3 years. Methane gas can also be ingested. Originally thought to be a remote possibility, methane gas can migrate into the natural water reservoirs. Yet, this is exactly what has happened. And these precise conditions are serving to impact the drinking water supplies as well as the safety of area crops, because of the evapotranspirational cycle. This is not a predicted event in Louisiana, it is exactly what is happening right now. The Gulf is a poisonous powder keg designed to get the people to either die prematurely, or to force them out of the Gulf in a mass exodus. Peter Sutherland, a person of strong interest, many have asked if there was a central figure who coordinated this conspiracy. To that question, I have to state that I cannot definitively point to one single person. However, if I were an unencumbered investigator and not operating under the umbrella of an agenda, I would want to look closely at a globalist named Peter Sutherland as the possible mastermind. Peter Sutherland is an insider. He is on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group. He is an honorary chairman of the Trilateral Commission 2010 present. He was chairman of the Trilateral Commission Europe 2001, 2010, and Sutherland was vice chairman of the European Roundtable of Industrialists 2006, 2009. Sutherland was also the former head of the World Trade Organization and the related GATT. Sutherland is the ultimate insider. More to the point, from 1996 to 2009, Sutherland was the CEO of BP. In 2009, he resigned from BP, and assumed a non-executive CEO position with Goldman Sachs, less than a year before the Gulf event. As if this is not enough to raise eyebrows, here is where Sutherland becomes my primary person of interest in this conspiracy. In 2006, Peter Sutherland was appointed as the Special Representative SRSG on the United Nations International Migration and Development. The UN's International Migration and Development would be in charge of large-scale population movements were to take place in the Gulf region. Remember the $40 billion relocation fund given to the Army Corps of Engineers to evacuate the Gulf? Well, guess who would be in charge? Peter Sutherland would be in charge through his role with the UN. Sutherland was and is in the catbird seat to coordinate this entire conspiracy in order to profit from the spill and to depopulate the Gulf. Murderers have been convicted on far less circumstantial evidence. Yet, through all the fake congressional investigations over this event, Sutherland's name is not listed in the Congressional Registry even one time. Is it even possible that one person sitting in his rural home in Arizona can find this multitude of interrelated facts and a Congress with unlimited investigative resources cannot? From regional depopulation to continental depopulation, the Gulf Stream is a strong interlinked component of the Earth's global network of ocean conveyor currents, which drive the planet's weather systems. Dr. Gianluigi Zangari echoes many scientists when they express concern over the fact that the Gulf Stream, known as the loop current, has all but stopped, and has been irreparably damaged by the oil spill. This is why Europe has recorded its two coldest winters in the last 2 winters. The Gulf Loop. For this reason, Zangari's concern is that should the loop current fail to restart, and it has not to date, dire global consequences may ensue as a result of extreme weather changes and many other critical phenomena, as the result of a new ice age caused by the loss of the mitigating effect that the loop current. Zangari states that the repercussions of which could trigger widespread droughts, floods, crop failures and subsequent global food shortages as well as a mini ice age in Europe. As an aside, I have had several of my European students tell me that since 2010, many European schools are teaching their young that Europe could experience an ice age and the inhabitants would be forced to relocate to the southern hemisphere, most likely in Africa. I believe I have told you just how this will happen. This would be population migration on a massive scale. Conclusion: there are a myriad of ways that the Gulf is being rendered uninhabitable, and add to that the fact that economy in the Gulf has been devastated, which has forced even more to leave. If the globalists were to do nothing else to the Gulf, in 20 years, the Gulf would be unrecognizable. The death curve will surely spike due to the invasive nature of the Corexit poisoning in so many facets of the residents' lives. However, I am predicting another game-changing event in the Gulf to exacerbate the exodus which is already happening. Some have noted that the sinkhole phenomenon will spread like wildfire, and will nudge more people out of the Gulf. Yet, others have suggested that HAARP will be used to ignite methane in the Gulf waters near coastal cities, which would force mass evacuations. I do not know what their move is. However, what I do know that within most of our lifetimes, we will see a mass relocation from the Gulf into urban areas. There is one variable which is also underlying this entire event, that I will leave you with in closing. For reasons that I will reveal in a future article, the Gulf needs to be vacated on the coast to facilitate the new energy business run by Soros, Gore and friends, and it can only happen in an ecological dead zone. In achieving the goals of Agenda 21, the ends always justifies the means.